Welcome to the Cold Case Christianity broadcast, the only Christian case-making program hosted by a cold case homicide detective. J. Warner Wallace has been investigating cold case murders in Los Angeles County for over a decade. His work has been featured on Fox News, Court TV, and Dateline. For more information about Jim's work and the case for Christianity, please visit coldcasechristianity.com. Now, here's your host, J. Warner Wallace.
Thanks for joining us at Cold Case Christianity. I'm J. Warner Wallace. This week we're going to talk about something, and really for the next 2 weeks we're going to talk about something that I have written about extensively at coldcasechristianity.com. I've also done a number of podcasts over the last 7 or 8 years on this topic in one variety or another. And I've also done broadcasts here that you've seen at the NRB network. If you've been watching our show on a weekly basis, I'll bet you'll seen that we've actually talked about this before in some fashion or other as we've kind of gone through our different series of events and topics. Now, I can tell you that this is something that's very near and dear to my heart as somebody who worked for a number of years as a youth pastor and observed the flight of young people from Christianity. And I do think that even the most recent Pew Research study, which we talked about here, kind of indicates that at least Christianity is having a diminished impact in our culture. And those folks who would no longer consider themselves affiliated with any religious denomination or any religious belief system, those who would say they belong or are affiliated with none, the rise of the nuns, those people are increasing. And that's the one group that seems to be increasing most dramatically in America, while Christians are decreasing in number and other groups are remaining relatively stable or just slight increases in number. So I think this is something that's worth our attention. And we're going to talk about what it is that we can do as older folks. And when I say older, I mean if you're above 30, I think you have a responsibility to do something to help younger believers, those who are kind of between 15 and 30, stand firm for what they believe, stay connected to those who are in the church, and remain identifying themselves as Christians. What can we do? Now, I'll tell you that I was struck powerfully by an event several years ago, and I've talked about it, I think, on this broadcast, or at least on my podcast, when a woman came up to me after speaking several times at a very large church here in Southern California. And after each service, there'd be a crush of people at the book table, many of whom were young people, some of whom were people more closer to my age. And one lady came up and she said, "Look, I'd just love to buy a copy of your book. Would you sign it to my daughter, who's 26, who has kind of walked away from her beliefs. She's walked away from the church." And I said, well, I mean, it was touching for me because I know I've seen this a number of times, and I've talked to folks who feel this way a number of times and who have experienced their own sense of loss of young people who are leaving their belief system as a Christian. And I could see it in her eyes. I could hear it in her voice. It really was painful for her. And she was desperately looking for any kind of solution. Would you please just sign a copy of your book so I can give it to her? I said, well, I'll be happy to do that. But the odds are really good, probably 100%, that she's just not going to read this. But I'll bet you, and here's the sad truth of it, that there was a number of years ago when she probably came home that first break in college, and she had questions and rising doubts that had really been kind of ignited through her experience in college. And I bet you she came to you and at least expressed her frustrations or some doubts. And there was an opportunity, I bet, then, as you first kind of talked to her and walked her through those doubts, where you could have addressed her questions powerfully, one-on-one. And she admitted to me, yes, of course, there was a time she could see this starting to happen, and she just didn't feel equipped to be able to address her daughter's concerns. And that, folks, is the gist of it. That is really where we need to focus and why we need, as parents, forget about being parents. If you're in your 30s and you aren't even yet a parent, it's incumbent upon us who have been through this age to get ready to prepare the next generation. And you can't do that by simply giving them somebody's book. Watch so-and-so's TV show. Really? Let me read for you something I posted a number of years ago at Cold Case Christianity. And it was a post called How to Raise Your Kids So They Will Remain in the Faith. And here's what struck me and kind of motivated me to write the blog. It's Darrell Evans, who is a pastor at First Baptist of Fairbury. And he posted a blog called How to Raise a Child in a Christian Home, 10 Important Tips. Now, I'm going to read for you his 10 tips, and I just want you to kind of track along with me, and then I'll go back and revisit them in a second. Here's what Darrell Evans says is necessary for us to raise our young people in a Christian home. Number one, put Christ first in your life. A few of us would argue that, I would think. Two, model what a Christian should look like. Okay. Three, make family a priority. Great advice. Four, teach your children the Bible and about God. Good. Five, make sure you're connected to a church. Excellent advice. Six, regularly attend a church. That kind of seems like it's in part of five, but okay. Seven, encourage your children to have godly influences in their lives. Mentorship is huge. Good. Eight, pray regularly with and for your children. Excellent advice. Nine, serve others with your child or with your children. Good. And 10, share your faith with others while around and in front of your children. Okay. 10 really good tips, I think, on how to raise your son or daughter in a Christian home successfully. Okay. What's interesting about that article is it wasn't entitled, 10 tips for keeping your or helping your child to keep their faith, or to hang on to what they believe is true, or to hold on to a Christian worldview. It's really just how to raise your child in a Christian home. So I want to cut some slack on that to begin with, because this really isn't a post that is specifically focused and designed to help you help your own kids hold on to what they believe as Christians. But I just looked at this list of 10, and as most of you know who follow my show, I was not raised by Christians, and I was not raised in the church. As a matter of fact, my parents were either atheists or largely lived as though, didn't hold a Christian worldview for sure. All right. That being the case, I think I also share with you that my dad remarried early on in the 60s to a woman who became a Mormon. And I have 6 brothers and sisters, all raised LDS. Now, let me just return to our list for a second and retitle the list. What if the list, this article, was how to raise a child in an LDS home or a Mormon home? Let me read you the 10 pieces of advice, and you tell me if these 10 pieces of advice, these 10 tips, wouldn't work just as well for Mormons to use as they are raising their kids in a Mormon home. Put Christ first in your life. I think my Mormon family would say that's important. Model what a Christian should look like. I know very few people on the planet who model what Christ should look like better than Mormons. 3, make family a priority. Well, gosh, that's kind of one of the bylines under President Hinckley. Families are forever. That's always a priority for Mormons. 4, teach your children the Bible and about God. I think that Mormons would actually say they do that. They would, of course, add to the Bible the Book of Mormon, and they would say that the Bible can't be trusted in every single place you read it, but luckily for them, the Book of Mormon clarifies what is being said in the Bible. So in the end, they are teaching their kids the Bible and the Book of Mormon. And they might say that kind of falls into the category of about God. They're teaching them about God from the Book of Mormon. 5, make sure you're connected to a church. I think for the most part, they would say that they are connected to the one true church, the Mormon church. And regularly attended church. Wow, I think most Mormons are much better in terms of weekly attendance at wards than Christians are when it comes to weekly attendance at churches. Encourage your children to have a godly influence in their life. I think my Mormon family would agree. And pray regularly with and for your children. I think they would also agree with that. And serve others with your child or your children. They would agree with that. And they often do. As a matter of fact, they're very proud of their service. And finally, share your faith with others around your children. I think they would. How about this? We have an entire program that sends our young people out into ministry roles as missionaries, where they're often accompanied by adults, bishops of the church and other leaders of the local ward, who come alongside those young people to evangelize folks in their own homes, door to door. So they are doing that. Here's my point, folks. Can you not agree that these 10 tips, these 10 guidelines for how to raise a child in a Christian home could also be used to how to raise a child in an LDS home? And that's the problem. The one thing that seems to be missing from the list of tips on how to raise your child in a Christian home is teach your children why Christianity is evidentially true and help them articulate this evidence to others. Because if you don't do that, all of this could be applied to virtually any theistic system. If you're Jewish, except for the modeling Christ, a lot of these that would apply to you. In the end, if all we're saying is take the master of your faith system and model a life after that master, and you will, look, this is the whole problem, is that we as Christians have the one worldview that is rooted in an historical event that can either be falsified or verified. It's not just rooted in a series of visions, rooted in a series of proverbial truths. Ours is actually rooted in an event that if it's not true, none of this is true. If it is true, we ought to all jump on board. And that event can be examined evidentially. It can be examined historically. And unlike the events in the Book of Mormon, your New Testament records a history that can be verified in a number of ways. I think in the end, the problem I'm seeing with the attrition rate in the church is directly related to the fact that we don't add that additional element here, right? Which is that you have to take a role in helping your students to become good Christian case makers. Now, what it comes down to is this, something I've said a bazillion times. When your students first start having questions about what they believe, we cannot be in a position where we simply say, well, here's a book from Josh McDowell, or here's a book from Lee Strobel, or here's a book from Hank Hanegraaff, or here's a book from even J. Warner Wallace, Frank Turek, whoever it may be, right? These are all great, but we don't need any more kind of platform level authors. We don't need any more $1 million apologists. I've always said it, I'll say it again. We need $1 million $1 apologists. We need all of us to become good case makers. And the first Christian apologist your kids should ever hear from is you. You need to be the best Christian apologist, Christian case maker you can be. And I will talk about that. As a matter of fact, I'm going to give you a couple of tips on how to do that. But first, I want to take a quick break. And when I come back, I want to introduce just a short video that'll help make my point.
Be sure to download the free Cold Case Christianity app from the iTunes Store and the Android Marketplace. The Cold Case Christianity app puts all the resources from coldcasechristianity.com in the palm of your hand. You can read the daily blog, listen to podcasts, and watch videos from within the application. And Jim uses the app to send direct messages to fans of Cold Case Christianity. The app will also link you to all Cold Case Christianity social media and provide you with a direct connection to J. Warner Wallace. Download the app today and become a better Christian case maker. Need a speaker for your next conference, retreat, training seminar, or church service? Jim travels around the country, making the case for the existence of God, the deity of Jesus, and the reliability of the Bible. He'd love to partner with you to create a powerful, transformational training experience. Just visit the Cold Case Christianity website and click the Book Me tab. You'll find everything you need to know there, including a list of Jim's speaking topics, promotional materials, Jim's speaking calendar, and a link to connect with our team so we can book your event.
Okay, I want to introduce for you just real quickly a video that I shot. It was shot for me at a church I spoke at. I'm going to tell you up front, sometimes when churches shoot videos, they don't always have the ability to give it back to you in high definition. So this is not a high definition video, but I think it's more than sufficient for you to hear my point here.